Hi guys, and welcome to the Abstract Workshop Part 2. This workshop was largely inspired about something that I get really grumpy bum about, and other subscribers had alluded to the same thing. And that is continuously doing the same marks. Your brain will not allow you to sort of break out of what it already knows. Nothing moves forward then. You don't get that sense of discovery. And if you don't get that, you get bored. And if you get bored, you don't do it. See what I'm saying? It's a vicious circle, getting you out of your comfort zone, in some cases quite literally, and making a conscious effort to discover those new marks. I decided if we were going to go out and discover stuff, we're going to go on a mini adventure. Our mini adventure today is at the beach. Another shout out. Hi Missy. Missy had requested a day at the beach. It's not a full day, but it's a great way to kick off this workshop, I think. You are required to go out and go to your favourite place, favourite walk, the park, woodlands, if you by the sea, it could be the shopping mall. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you're kind of getting out and about, and the things you'll need with you is the ability to take a picture. So I took my phone with me. The other thing you can take out, and you can also take out in addition to having a camera, is some paper and a pencil or a pen. If you want to go full on out and about and start doing some plein air stuff, by all means, don't let me stop you. I took a sketchbook out with me. You can take a sketchbook, but if you don't take the photos, you're going to have a hard time doing the next step. You need to take photos or separate piece of paper if you don't have a phone. The other thing you're going to need to consider is access to a printer or Procreate or something like that. I've tried to create the workshop around things that you may ordinarily have, and I'm trying to come up with a few options that you can achieve each stage rather than being kind of tunneled into a situation that you might not have. Which brings me on to my next thing. If you can't go out for any reason, then you can still achieve the first step indoors. So let's start with the first step. I chose to go to the beach. Obviously. Feeling the need for the sea breeze. The first step is look out for textures, compositions, and colour. The first thing I noticed was both texture and colour. So it was like this yellow moss stuff that you would normally find growing on rocks. Beautiful colour, and the textures are just delicious. The other thing I discovered was some foliage. Luscious green, great texture again. When you're doing this, think about the viewfinder from the first workshop. If you haven't seen the first workshop, I highly recommend you pop over there and do it, because we are going to be talking about that a lot throughout this video. So you've got your viewfinder. Imagine you're looking through it, right? This is the picture that you're going to take, yeah? That's the kind of idea. You must obscure the thing that you are taking a picture of. If you come across things that are representational, compositions certainly, then by all means do it. Now, I love the weird and wonderful. And when I saw this, I just couldn't help myself. McDonald's packaging. I mean, it's bloody marvellous. The composition was great. Then I found like what would have been a plant or a tree or a weed, right? And it had obviously been chopped off. I chose that for both texture and composition. I really like the way it looked like a really small collection of trees. So obviously I was at the beach, so I had water. I've got copious amounts of sand and grit and pebbles for days. Pick up some objects if you want. I picked up a couple of stones, a shell or two, and other bits and bobs that I could potentially use for reference later in this workshop. There was a Smirnoff bottle that was kind of broken. The composition, the way it was found, was so delightful to me. Anything that interests you, takes your fancy, but you have to have a kind of mixed bag of colours, composition, and texture. So to help those people who don't have a camera or decide that they want to both do camera and artwork, warm up for the workshop, I sat down and did a few studies myself. I'm all about bodies of water. As you know, it's a real struggle for me So I decided to try and imagine that. I used a mixture of art graft, neo colours, and I used some soft pastels as well to create some texture. And I think it's so important just to take the time and really look around you. The work I ended up with could be considered representational, but I wanted to think about colours. That's what I was thinking about. So less about composition, a little bit of texture in there because I am drawing, obviously. I also decided to, whilst it was wet, smush it into the sand, see if it made any additional textures. It didn't really, but that's besides the point. I was still quite happy with it. Trying to capture those different colours in the waves, those greens and blues and ochre as well. There was a bit of texture in there, you know, which I was really happy with. And I looked across and there was this rust rock with like this steel rods. And over time, the stone around it had obviously worn into this huge boulder. I found that so interesting. Grabbed them for the reference pile. On top of that, I also took the time to do a really quick study as well, just in the sun. I did all my stuff in my sketchbook, but that was because I had digital references that I will be using, and I'll be using my sketchbook work as references at the end of this workshop. If you don't have access to a digital camera, it will be hard for you because the idea is to discover new marks, right? And if you're going into it having to make those marks yourself, you're gonna find it really difficult. So what I would suggest you do is really observe, look at the texture you're creating vividly, try and replicate it. You're basically a copy machine at this point. I don't care if you like it, that's not the point. We're not getting on that, but just try and make sure you're looking at those marks, you are really looking at those colours as well and figuring out those compositional references that you create. Think about that. Think about light as well. When the sun cascades over surfaces, you know, it emphasises those surface textures, and I think that's interesting as well, so grab them. And it's also a way to meet new friends. I love seagulls. I think they are so chuffing funny. The character and the personality in them is just, it's just everything, isn't it? And here we are. We are home. The next thing I want you to do, if you've taken photographs, you need to print them out. And can you do it in colour? If you can't do it in colour and you don't have access to a colour printer, print them out in black and white, but then make sure you have access to your digital copies that are in colour. I've printed out 11 images. So print between like 5 and 10. You now want to grab an A3 or an A4 piece of paper. You will need some scissors, something to put glue down with, and obviously, you heard right, the glue. Yeah, that's right, guys. We are gonna collage our way to victory. I'll give you a minute to get set up and then we'll get on to the next stage and you'll be on this bad boy. See you in a minute. Okay, so we have our reference. So I've split these up. So here's some compositional ones. It came out like half the size it needed to be, but that's okay. I chose this one. Now, some of these images will be all of the three, the composition, texture, and color, or it'll just be one, or what have you. But these are just ones that the composition for me is like, that's it. I love that composition. I chose this one as well because I really like the composition of the kind of sphere, this netting kind of going over, the juxtaposition of two forms. I think is really interesting. I'm gonna keep these aside. Everything else then is piled up. So what I'm going to do is the same as before. We are going to cut them into squares essentially. Cut them facing down so that you cannot see what you're left with until the end, till we've stopped our chopperoonie. So I've got a guillotine. Slot this bad boy in. I'm going to keep going until we get roughish squares. The reason I'm doing squares is because, you know, I've printed on cheap paper or just printer paper, But the problem is when you tear these images up, you get that white, fluffy kind of edging. I'm not really enamored by that. In fact, I might actually say cut this up 4 times. So that's the sort of size you're going to be left with, all right? So I'll see you back here when I have done that. Give you a chance to get this sorted as well, okay? When you have done that, you will be left with this little satisfying wad. The reason I chose to do them uniform is because it takes out the thinking, doesn't it? And it still works just as good. We're not trying to create a masterpiece here. We're trying to create a situation where we can discover something new. So I'm now going to go through my cards and see what we're left with. I'm going to sort of think about lights and darks, and I'm going to take out any ones that I don't think would be good for this. Disperse them evenly around the page. So all you're doing is thinking about color, texture right now. Now you're left with something that might resemble this. I'll put that one in. Now we are going to just place them. We're not going to stick or commit. We're just going to sort of place them. I'm actually going to do it like that, just so I can get more. It just seems like more, doesn't it? So what I might do is just get my blank space and just somewhat arrange in a very cohesive way. And what I mean by that, this is when you have to think about composition, color, and texture. All right, you have to evenly disperse it across the page. And this might be an intimidating part, but you're just playing. It's just like making a puzzle, essentially. You're not committing to anything just yet. You're literally just seeing how things go. Try and cover the whole page if you can. Yeah, I'm fairly happy with that. I'm gonna commit to that. Doesn't have to be like amazingly perfect. Try not to let the perfection creep in. This is why this is just so like fun, you know? I'm gonna crack on with this and stick these down, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so this is obviously drying. All I've done is plonk it down with some Mod Podge, and then I've gone over just to make sure they are absolutely down. I'm gonna set this aside to dry, and we're just gonna prep for the next stage. The next thing that I want you to think about is tools, surface, and medium. So that's what you're going to use for the next phase. But let me give you a clue to help you decide. The collage we've just done is basically a reference page. You've gathered loads of stuff, you've obscured each reference, and you've just collaged them together into a cohesive piece. Now, remember I said to you that this is about composition, color, and texture. If we consider all three, we're going to think about all three. It's just tiles, essentially, and they're so obscure that it doesn't really make up anything specific, which is why we set aside these references. If you do come up with something that represents something else, that's absolutely fine. I'm not bothered. This is to get you to think about marks differently, thinking about textures differently when you're applying it to your artwork. So yes, this is an abstract video, but I'm just doing this to cover all bases. Those who want to be representational but loose and a bit more kind of playful and experimental, and those who want to be full on abstract. So I'm going to think about this as my background. I'm going to think about this kind of shape, this kind of oval shape, which kind of emulates this circular here. And then to kind of try and balance up these rigid marks, I'm going to think about this rigid marks as well, potentially either somewhere up here and down here. I've only got one of these. I should probably have printed multiples of these and just had them sort of strewn across the page. But ultimately, that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about in terms of my composition. I will refer to my tile collage for texture and color, and you can use both as resources, because like the first abstract video where I asked you to create a piece inspired by the best bits, we're just doing the same on a bigger scale. When you're choosing your tools, medium, and surface, that's what I want you to think about. However, I am going to advise you not to make it easy for yourself. If you have raw canvas, then get raw canvas. Cut it into A3. This is just slightly larger, probably about 3 millimeters bigger than an A3. Raw canvas is quite difficult to work on because it sucks in moisture. If you don't have any canvas, I have a pack of this, which is Crafting Companions. I just ripped out this one, which has basically got a canvas texture to it, but it doesn't necessarily do well with moisture. It can be a bit temperamental, actually. This one's more textured. So whatever you decide to use, textured paper, create your own textured paper or raw canvas, bear in mind, we're trying to experiment and create new marks, create new textures, and in order to get out that rut, you need to set yourself up for an uncomfortable start. Get out of that comfort zone that you're in, because that's the problem. The comfort zone is the problem. It feels like a secure and safe space, but guys, trust me, it's not. I'm going to be mixed media. I'm going to go with ink. Acrylic, both textured and non-textured, and when I say that, I mix in my sand paste into a lot of my acrylic pots. I'm going to see if I can put some dry mediums on there as well. So I've got neo colours and I've got soft pastels. And if I have room, I will obviously throw in some art graph. Those are the types of mediums I'm thinking about. Because I'm on canvas, I can go with a much stiffer brush. I've got a flat pan brush because it helps me cover a wider surface. This one, because it is broken, I mean, it is absolutely battered. And obviously I've got my Liquitex Freestyle brush, and it's got these really hard plastic bristles. I haven't reached for this, and I think that it's because I'm not sure what I'm doing. So I feel like my mind is actively avoiding this. Hence why it's on the table in front of me. You can choose to use palette knives, forks, spoons, your fingers, water bottle, sponges. So we're going to meet back here and we're going to get started on creating something. I cut another piece of canvas off because, as some of you may know, whenever I create something, I always do a little tester. So for example, I might go, oh, I don't know whether I want to put that on. Plop it on, and then I can see how it applies. Is it going to go? Am I going to feel okay about it? And that's kind of what I do. So just in case I don't like it, and before I commit to something, I will have that bad boy to one side. The way we're going to use this is we're going to do it in layers. So with compositions, there are some rules, right? But I think the compositional side could be a workshop in itself. I'll be perfectly honest. There's books literally just on composition, like there is colour and texture. You're going to just watch me kind of create one. Let's get the mid-ground in first. I've sort of roughly got my sticky wicks in. Let's try and get some of this in then, shall we? Do I like the ball off the page? I don't think I do. I'll probably put the ball there. Now overlap the shapes, and the reason is you can decide to do like negative space on it if you like, all right? So you can decide whether you want to keep it in or not. Now this one, this bad boy. Now I've got a piece of tracing paper here. If you don't have a tracing paper, that's fine. If you've got baking paper. The reason I do this is because sometimes you can get caught up with the texture and it's overwhelming. There's a lot there and it's like, oh dear Lord. So if you put just a piece of tracing paper over, it kind of distorts what it is you're looking at. You're less thinking about the details and it will be about colour. Let's get some colour in. Do you know what? I'm going to go for this violet. Violet isn't in there, but I need to get something down because I'm starting to overthink it. You can always cover it up. If there's something you don't like, please just cover it up. Just don't worry about it. I love these oranges, this kind of orange wispiness and the speckledy, you know, like this sort of stuff, these two. Let's get that in there. I need revitalising a bit. Let's get some of that dotted about, shall we? Don't be precious about it because it's literally just a exercise at the end of the day. Right, greens. This green, quite mossy green that, so let's go for this one. I don't know what I'm going to end up with. It's important for me to say this. When I do these workshops, I don't ever know what I'm going to end up with. And I like to keep it that way because, you know, for me, in order for me to do these videos, I need to be engaged. So it might look like a right mess to you, but I'm just demonstrating that it doesn't matter. I want to knock some of this orange back. I will put it back in, but I don't think I like the way it kind of came out, I'll be honest. This purple's weird now. Okay, where's that bloody ball? Right, that is very peachy. So I have got a peach somewhere, and I'm just going to get like a base layer down. I'll move this colour about. So that does look like a bloody mess, but that's how I know I'm on the right track. It looks very, very scary. Very scary. But that's okay. It's your first layer. You've got colour down, you've made a mess. You can't get any worse than this. I'm going to let this dry now so that the things I make, I don't lose. So what we're doing here is applying texture and colour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start referring to all my compositional references, and the ball is definitely one of them. They've got some scratchy marks, which I like, and trying to incorporate some of those teal greens from the netting. Also the foliage as well. Trying to balance up all the colours. Get those sticks back in as well because I missed out some of them. And just keep going and going, taking away and adding, taking away and adding. There was that lovely ochre I really, really wanted to get in. Tried to replicate some of the texture as you can see in the bottom, but a different colour. That was also really, really important. You don't have to keep the same colour, but keep kind of going back and forth, looking at your tiled piece, looking at your different references, pulling different references in from your day, thinking about stuff from your sketchbook. The top of the page was getting a bit full, so I want to try and distinguish that ball by bringing a sort of sky in. So now we are left with something like this. This is it dry. And quite honestly, I appreciate that it is quite messy. Despite the fact that it might not look like a cohesive piece. I wouldn't have learnt from it had I not made the steps I made. I will more than likely go in with dry mediums, really emphasize some of these textures. This kind of wispiness, you can see them sort of dotted around. You will start to see me replicate them, and that's kind of what I like about doing works like this. It's just a suggestion. See me start to do this. The mottled texture here and sort of here, replicated throughout the piece with this sort of very small mottling, some of which are even smaller that, you know, you won't be able to see really unless you're here. So here you can see these sticks, you know, that I've used. You can see a formation of them sort of throughout. You saw me put them in my composition and I've kind of pushed them back. This sort of very vibrant teal colour here, I've emphasised in what could be deemed as almost like a sky. Would I leave this piece here? No, I absolutely would not. There are bits about it I like. I am loving this corner here. Love this. As you know, guys, I am completely obsessed with there's bits about it I like. I might even call a book that. If I was to be in a position to make a book, I might even call it Bits About It I Like, right? All I'm giving you is suggestions. If I was to do any workshop, I would totally enjoy being given freedom to think about it in my own way and my own style. And yes, as per the first workshop, as I said, if you haven't seen it, you should have really seen it by now. Come on, guys. I will absolutely be chopping this up in just a moment. If you love the piece as a whole, then use it as reference, put it on your wall, start again. It's entirely up to you what you do with this, but it will inform the third workshop. So keep it regardless of whether you cut it up or you keep it intact because you think it's the best thing since sliced bread, there will be a third workshop. That I've decided this is kind of one of 3. It's kind of grown arms and legs, actually, I'll be quite honest with you. But needless to say, you will need this bad boy, all right? And you'll also need to watch the first workshop. So as promised, I'm gonna cut this bad boy out. Oh, so excited. Tear it away. Oh, that one's... What do you think? Oh, they are nice. Okay, okay, next. What do you think? Oh my God, I love that. I knew it, guys. Oh, that's beautiful. I know you're probably thinking the girl has finally lost it. We all knew it was coming. We all knew this day was coming. She has lost her marbles. I haven't. I believe in what I'm doing. Right, next. What do we think? Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, that is nice. Okay, okay. Right, next. What do we think? Oh, yes. Oh, that one has got to be my favourite. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to seal them. I'm not going to work on them. I thought I was, but I'm not. And the reason is because of the third workshop. I know it's all sort of, you know, cloak and daggers type situation, but just trust me, it's for your own good. It will be even better. I hope you enjoyed this week's workshop. There is a lot of steps, there is a lot to think about, there's a lot to do, but by all means, make it your own. A massive shout out to Jess. Hi, Jess. Jess had done the first workshop. I don't know if you can see it on my phone. Jess had done the first workshop, as you can see, right? I mean, look at that amazing piece. Look at that. So that was obviously her viewfinder. And then that was the colour she made, was absolutely gorgeous. I love that mauve with that green. Sorry, it's just gone off. Anyway, Jess had done the first workshop and tagged me in what she had done on Instagram. And I'm forever grateful for that because it was so delightful and so humbling to see someone's work after creating that workshop. It was just, I was overwhelmed. Emotions, guys. I hope you liked it. It is a bit long, it is a bit chunky monkey, and there is a lot of steps, but you can keep coming in and out, you know? It's a video. It pauses, it saves, it's fine. I love you guys so much. You are literally the best. Mwah.